picking up, how do you find an audience for the work? How do you kind of go about finding an audience, and how do you use kind of the tools available to you to find an audience? And does Fringe as a kind of festival support that, or how do they support that?
They do provide the opportunities for advertising, where you put ads on the site. They give you discounts for flyers. They give you a list of publications and different networks to reach out to, but you kind of have to find your niche audience. You can't just, I mean, you can, but I wouldn't suggest just blasting everyone in Southern California, because you send it out to 1,000 people, 10 people will respond, one person will come. Um, but I think if you target people that love horror, if you target people that are servers, um, there's just no limit to how much you're going to talk about your own show in the next 3 months. But that's kind of the part of the experience. But I think there are a lot of really unique boutique shops in the valley off of Burbank. We've gone to the Mystic Museum that really hones in on horror and slashers, and targeted ads on social media.
Fringe itself also provides a networking event. It's called Office Hours. So every Wednesday, yeah, from March up until um, a couple days ago, they provide in Hollywood at certain like bars, and it's just anyone that's in Fringe can come and talk about their show amongst other Fringers. And that's kind of also the audience they want you to target as well, because it's like, hey, I'll go see your show if you come to my show. We can comp swap. I had talked to somebody that is like has been in Fringe and has like a hand in the festival on like organization side, and I was telling him this is my first time in Fringe. It's all new to me, and he started talking to me about how he asked me, he's like, had you heard of Fringe before? And I said, well, a little bit because my friend was in it, but I hadn't. I wouldn't know about Fringe if my friend wasn't in it. And he goes, yeah, isn't that kind of crazy because we've been around for such a long time, and theater is what we think is on a big scale, but still it's not really well known in LA. And I said, yeah, well, why is that? I think it should be like a massive thing, because when you are driving down Hollywood Boulevard, they have the flags on the post. But if you don't know what it is, it's not going to catch your eye.
When I used to run the Ovation Awards, and one of the things we knew is there were in any given year 250 theater companies producing work around Los Angeles, not including Fringe, like just in the intimate
Mm-hmm.
theater scene, the 99 Seat Theater world. And then 400 shows would submit to the Ovation Awards. And that's a significant number, probably rivaling, if not larger, than what is produced in the kind of off and off Broadway scene in New York on any given year. But it is so much less perceived as part of the cultural zeitgeist here that it's always struggled for attention. And it's interesting. It's never entirely clear why. I mean, LA is more known as a visual art and film and
Yeah,
music city. And I think with theater, it's always like you're not only convincing people to come see your show, you're convincing people to come see any show. Like you're convincing people the act of going to a show is how they want to spend their evening, and like you have to sell that whole concept before you even sell like the fact that your show
totally.
is the one they want to see.
Yes. And that I think that's like a part of not necessarily, you know, I can talk to you about this. I can talk to the people that are in this room about like, hey, come see our show, and you will hear the idea and you're like, that's cool, I'll go watch it. But I think trying to find the audience that has no idea about theater, um, that has never been to a play, that has never been to a musical, who has maybe only watched one horror movie in their lifetime, to just come solely based on, hey, you're my friend and you love me. Come see this. I promise you're gonna like it. And I think that's personally my angle. Like I said, I'm in the makeup artist world, so a lot of my crew that's coming is in that side. And like I said, they're like, what do we expect? And I said, just buy a ticket, show up, have a good time.
Looking at it from the outside,
Hmm.
LA's theater world has always been kind of attached to the avant-garde more than to like the commercial product, which is movies.
Yeah, I mean, part of it's the avant-garde, but I think there's a sort of different stereotype of LA theater, which is that LA theater it's what I call the La La Land, misperception, which is that LA theater is an avenue by which you seek commercial representation. Like the idea of like I'm doing this for exposure to promote my career, and there, like referencing that movie, the whole thing that she does like a one person show that 5 people come to see, and that launches her career into film stardom. It doesn't happen. That's not actually
No.
how anything works ever. The LA theater is rooted in the desire by people who are making their living in unsatisfying artistic pursuits to find a satisfying artistic avenue.
Amen.
So yeah, like that is actually the root of it. The really interesting stuff is rooted in people who have careers or revenue streams that were coming from largely TV and film, and then wanted to find a way to remain artistically cohesive. And so you actually had a situation where starting in the 1970s and proceeding through the 2000s, the actors, union actors, equity actors, were suing their own union for the right to work for free. I mean, just sort of internalize that concept. There's no other industry in the world in which that would even be conceivable. Explain that to auto workers for 5 seconds. Like, right. So it's a fascinating thing, and I think that is because, there was this desire by people who were part of SAG-AFTRA and they were part of the 4As to not be locked into having to find the equity work that doesn't exist. And so you have these theater companies that existed and still do, even though this 99-seat plan, which existed for many years, which allowed actors to work for almost for free, that's gone. Equity dismantled that. And I think Fringe has largely stepped in to fill that because are you guys working under contract or no?
No.
What's your impression of sort of the landscape of LA theater outside of the festival these days?
It's a very small, very difficult to advertise avenue, but I would say 80% of the people that came to see that show knew everyone in the show. And we put out advertisements and promo as much as we could, but it's tough to get people to be interested in an original piece that's not, oh, we're doing Shakespeare or we're mounting Hairspray. This is something that nobody's ever heard of, and then B, getting people to actually commit to come to it.
There was a period of time, particularly kind of when I first moved to LA in the early 2000s, where there was a section of the LA Times, for instance, where you could put a small ad through LA Stage Alliance that would get some eyeballs. The reviewing press, there was LA Weekly, Backstage, the Times even would actually show up at 99-seat theaters. Like, as crazy as that is to imagine, actually gave a little bit of a shit about what was happening. And so there were opportunities to kind of get a show that would hit and actually get some attention. And I really haven't seen, and I could just be that I'm missing it, but I have not seen those anything like that except for through Fringe.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's you need someone to kind of, even if you're self-producing, you need kind of one of the bigger people to help you echo your voice, because it's, we are literally on the ground zero of this entire process.
So what's next for the show? So what do you think of, like, things go really well at Fringe?
This is something that could play well, especially in the fall. It's ready for a really great Halloween audience. I think this is something that we've kind of molded into a show that people could jump in and take over a part if this show has legs. There are opportunities for encore performances through Fringe. If awards are a possibility, you kind of have to apply for a lot of different opportunities to win awards or recognition, which is not the goal, but I think longevity is something that is in the future hopes. And I would love to keep this going a couple weekends every month. I think it's something that people would really enjoy. and I think Halloween is the next step. October is in the
Would you want to produce it more fully, or would you want to kind of find a home for it?
there. Yeah, there's a longer version. I think 60 minutes is a good amount to hold people's attention, especially when they're seeing 6 or 7 shows a night. But if this was the piece of theater that people were seeing solely on a Saturday night, I think we could extend it to maybe 75, 90 minutes. Um, so it's still a fully formed show, but this is a small size of what we could do on a larger scale. And that's really what Fringe is about, DIY, self-producing, and maybe with a bigger budget and a little more assistance, it could be more and a little more concrete.
Hmm.
Yeah. No, I think that's definitely where it would go. Um, yeah, it's interesting because Fringe is both. I mean, this is something that talked about a bunch. Fringe is both sort of a concept. The term fringe both applies to kind of the idea of something being on the fringes of the mainstream, which is how the term started, right? Like
Hmm.
it was a festival in Edinburgh. It was a DIY festival in Edinburgh, literally on the fringes of the Edinburgh International Theatre Festival in the late '40s.
Yeah.
Um, and also its own kind of structure. Do you see it as?
Well, I mean, it began in like literally in confrontation with that international festival. I mean, there were the people in the '60s that were like literally thrown
Mhm.
out to the curb. I mean,
Yes,
that's the thing that made it the fringe.
Hmm.
yes,
It's, you have to
yeah.
walk past all these guys.
So do you still see it as kind of in confrontation with the mainstream, or do you now see it as more of kind of an entry path into kind of a more like what does that term even mean for theater these days? Mainstream versus fringe. Like, are those even concepts that apply to an art form that is itself sort of so marginalized?
I think in the mainstream, there's a default to kind of make sure you're marketable, where
Hmm.
there's a recognizable name or IP or something that hooks people, and sometimes that comes at the sacrifice of like artistic integrity. And I think Fringe provides that access to put what you want, how you want it, say what you want without needing to compromise at any point in your journey. And I think, being fully self-produced, you don't have to really answer to anybody about the contents of what you're putting into your show to make sure that, you know, audiences come to see it. We're not making a Marvel movie, or you know what I mean. We're not mounting a really IP heavy Broadway show. This is something that's personal and completely self-edited, and it comes directly from you. And I think those two things, they're not mutually exclusive, but I think Fringe can kind of protect you and make sure that what you want to say comes through in the work that you're putting out.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. It's I mean the reason why there's so much pressure obviously is that at a certain level, theater is a paralyzingly expensive thing to do. Like it's
Extremely, yeah.
crazy. Once you do have to start in being entering the world where everyone gets paid and you're trying to actually fully produce, like it is the economics of it are so brutal and are
Mm.
so the margins are so thin, and obviously most of it exists in a nonprofit context where you're kind of not where you are on the one hand free theoretically to be artistic because you are not bound by commercial pressures, but on the other hand the reality is most theater nonprofits need a very heavy ticket sales mix to succeed, and is an increasingly kind of thin donor base that supports those. A lot of the foundation support that created the nonprofit American regional theater movement don't have the money or don't give the money anymore, like the Doris Duke Foundation, the Ford Foundation, or Irvine. So it is interesting that is the trend, but I think a lot of it is driven by the kind of the cost of just getting a show up becomes sort of paralyzingly expensive and can
Hmm.
kind of inhibit a certain type of decision making.
Yeah, it's
Totally.
it's it's tough to
Yeah.
not want to go for the easy ticket sales or the easy money. You could mount something, buy the rights to something, and people would come see a well-known quantity, but to put yourself out there with a piece that nobody's heard of is it's a challenge, but it's really rewarding when people respond to it.
Yeah, so what is the reward of that? Because obviously the challenges are obvious, but what are the rewards of that?
I mean, at the base of it, I think having that audience response, I that's what artists we crave we crave that that audience recognition.
Mhm.
We're not in this to win awards or we're not going to make $1 billion producing this show, but I think to know that you have 75 people that came to sit in this theater for 60 minutes and they responded to something that you're saying, it might sound cheesy or trite, but that's the goal. That's you don't go into Fringe for profit. You go into Fringe to express yourself and have people respond to your story.
Mhm.
There are, there are goals beyond that with the extensions or going on tour or having people, help your boost your career. But I think if you're going into it with any other goals other than having people listen to your voice, you might be doing it wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think I've always thought that's what was the best part of LA theater is that like LA, for as much as people perceive LA as a crass kind of commercial town, the theater world is not that, and so much theater
Mhm.
that's done here, for better or worse, is really just kind of a celebration of the creativity of and the desire of the participants, and
Mhm.
often that's just been because there is no expectation of financial success, so you're kind of just working in a world where like the success is the art is the creative is the success of the creative endeavor.
Yeah.
Right.
It's great when the lightning in the bottle hits and kind of both things come together,
Mhm.
but it's also like profoundly satisfying, when it's just artistically an incredibly cool experience.
I think
Yeah.
it's also like the content that is at Fringe too. I think we're at a time, I guess I could like compare it to like what's out there in film and like cinema, right? Where it's like it's a time of the Marvel movie where we've seen the same story over again. Like we're starting to see the same story, just wear different hats. And I think when it with theater and more specifically Fringe, you get like these fresh new ideas, whether it's like a one person show or a 10-person ensemble or a musical where like at these networking events people are standing in front of you talking about their show and you're like, holy shit, how did you come up with that? You
Yeah.
know?
Mhm.
And it's like a fresh new take that you might not see in cinema, or maybe you will one day, but it's nice, especially during these times where it's like, yeah, I went to the movies and I saw the same old movie again with different actors with kind of the same face. And with Fringe, it's like, it is the avant-garde, it is the weird, it's, they have clowns doing things, they have mimes doing things, so it's like it's a bit of everything that you're not used to seeing every other weekend that I think is kind of awesome. And being in a show where it's like, I get to play somebody running around being chased by a knife, that I won't necessarily, I mean, fingers crossed, maybe one day again, but for now I get to say that I'm doing it consistently and the work is consistent.
Yeah. It's cool though, because one of the things that's happened is that this was a particularly weird Broadway season. Like, and I think the weird has actually found its own value. Like for a while, it was like this whole thing that it has to be jukebox music or it has to be kind of commercial property. But like, this was a Broadway season where there are two shows that center around corpses. There's Dead Outlaw and Operation Mincemeat, both of which center basically around a corpse. It's
Yeah.
like John Proctor as a villain to me is an incredible play that has percolated the American theater for a while that now has sort of a seminal production. Like maybe Happy Ending is a show about robots falling in love. Like it's interesting to me that on that large a scale, with that much at risk and millions of dollars at risk, the weird and the desire to tell a story that is not what you would see in a Marvel movie has reached that kind of heights. Now that's to say, Death Becomes Her is still a movie adaptation. Good Night and
Mhm.
Good Luck is still audiences wanting to see George Clooney sweat. Like there's still that aspect of it, but it's always really gratifying to me when I see the weird penetrate to a degree where like someone literally raised $10 million to tell a story about a corpse that was put in sideshows for 70 years.
That's amazing.
Which is great. Or John
Yeah.
Proctor was an outlaw. John Proctor is a villain, which is an incredible play about young women really discovering the lies and the stories they've been told about men and what it means to be good men, being done on a Broadway stage with an A-list cast and getting sold out audiences and actually achieving level of profitability. Like, I think that it's been interesting to see that kind of ethos or that kind of aesthetic kind of reach those heights. Even something like Paranormal Activity, like the idea that we're doing, it is a film franchise, but we're taking horror and seeing that now as a viable, theater property, because it's like, if you don't take risks, the avenues for success are increasingly limited if you don't take risks.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you want to do something boring, people can be bored at home.
Right. It's cheaper.
Yeah, it's cheaper, right? It's cheaper to do something boring at home. Like, if I wanted to watch, and also I think the weird thing is prestige TV has widened people's appetites for the weird.
Yes. Yeah. People want
and the dark and the
yeah. People totally want, and I think that's a part of it's like, yeah, we're bored. We're bored, but we're also like hungry and thirsty for something off the cuff. Like we're willing to go with the weird. We're willing to, because we want to have that conversation with our friends, right? Like, we want to sit down and be like, did you see that? Like, what do you think of? We want that dialogue, and I think that's what Fringe provides. And that's, again, a part of it. Like, I wish it was bigger. I wish more people would see it. But I think that's the exciting part of being in something like this, where it's just like I said before, like telling my friends, come see it. I'm not going to tell you what to expect. It's funny. It's scary. It's all of that. And you can go after the show, have a drink, and talk about it with your friends, because it's not going to be something you've seen before.
And the crazy thing about LA is that something can be really seminal in a specific geographic region and completely not touch anywhere else. Like, I mean, the fires were the sort of very, kind of extreme example of this. That, like, literally there were parts of the city that were on fire. Huge, thousands and thousands of acres were on fire.
Right.
We were all affected by it to some degree, but realistically, you could also live your life almost detached from that.
Totally.
And, the same thing, like, WeHo Pride is happening this weekend. WeHo Pride completely takes over West Hollywood. Like, it dominates that world completely. It's huge. And yet I was, with an Uber driver this morning, like, yeah, I think there's something going on in West Hollywood this weekend. I'm like, yeah, it's the biggest queer event in the country is happening this weekend. But no, like, if you're not part of it, if you're close to it, if you don't have to drive through it, you don't know that it's happening.
Right. It's like LA is, we know, is so massive, but until you're a part of these like individual pockets, you're like, oh yeah, I guess it is. It could be kind of small if you think about it.
Yeah.
Is that what theater does? Does that make these enormous impenetrable spaces smaller?
I mean, I think that. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you go.
I mean, yes and no. I think like the theater community, it's like one of those things. Like, it's a small world. Like, you can talk to like 3 different people and find out that like, oh, I've worked with you and I know that person that you've worked with. So I think the theater community is a small community in itself.
I would say, John, to that point, that what this community needs are more opportunities to come together.
Mm-hmm.
Because the thing about theater is that it's also pretty isolating. Like, when you're working on a show, like, nothing stops you from going to see theater like working in theater. Because, like, when you're working on your own show, it's your whole life. Like, it takes over your whole life. Like, right. I see there are audience members who see so much more than I do, and I do this for a living, because, like, it's also like I'm in this freaking building all day. I don't also want to spend all my nights at someone else's, but it is like so I think there are and Fringe, I think, has really become this for its community, and has filled with the office hours and the Fringe Central, all that, like, creating these kind of spaces for people to gather and understand the importance of that. I do think that LA, again, especially with the absence of the Ovation Awards, the LA Weekly Awards, and while these were award shows, which have kind of a, like you were saying, like, winning was the objective, winning was the sort of the MacGuffin of that story. You were there to win an award, but it was really like the theater prom. Like, you were there to see your friends and to get dressed up and to celebrate that, like, hey, we did another year of this crazy, stupid thing together, and isn't that amazing?
Right.
And that is
Fundamentally,
really,
fundamentally, the Oscars is just an industry meeting.
is what?
I mean, fundamentally, the Oscars is just an industry promotional meeting. It's not. There's nothing special about it other than they're trying to get people to see movies.
Yeah. Yeah, I think what was special about particularly the Ovations and the LA Weekly is that there are so few times where you feel like you are not seen, but like celebrated. And it was like, fuck it, we're going to celebrate each other and we're going to throw our own damn prom and make, and I think and so it was like a chance, for the weirdos to be at the grown up table. And there was something really gratifying about that. And I think that is really needed. I think there need to be more opportunities in LA theater for folks to come together across sort of company lines. It's also because you spend so much time working with your own sort of like sub world of it that like you might only know the people who've intersected with your theater company, and so it's those chances to really branch out beyond that, I think are really valuable, and Fringe provides that, I think, in a way that nothing else really does right now.
Hey guys, I'm going to interject again. Do you guys want to go another round? I know.
No, I unfortunately, I would love to. I unfortunately do have to go and do the rest of the things I need to do today in my very mainstream theater job. But there's emails to answer about ticket sales. But
so Eric, should we give that quick close?
Yeah, no, I just want to say how grateful I am for you guys taking the time. I know that you're in the midst of getting a show up. Do a pitch. Tell us what it's playing. Tell us where it's playing. Tell us what's going on.
Yeah, the Server Slasher Massacre. We open June 5th is our preview. We open Friday the 13th at 11 p.m. It's a scary, spooky opening.
That's awesome.
And we have 6 shows throughout the month of June as a part of the Fringe Festival. Go on $2 off if you enter promo code SHIFT. So find us on the Hollywood Fringe Festival website. Come see us. 60 minutes. Have a good time. Get a mimosa on Friday the 13th. A blood orange mimosa.
Nice.
Yeah, just come have a great time with us for an hour, and we'll be out, and you'll see some really great theater. 10 people on stage doing what they love. So thank you guys so much for.
Thank you so much. So fun.
Yeah, and I think I wrote a blog about 10 years ago, which was entitled "Making Theater is a Dumb Thing to Do." And I stand by that. Like, making theater is a fundamentally stupid thing to do. It is also the greatest possible way you could spend your life. Like, it is absolutely. It is absolutely the way that I have never regretted the moment. There's not to say I've never regretted any of it, because God knows there are budget meetings I've regretted sitting through, but I have never regretted making this choice to have this be the way I've spent my life. And it is truly like the dumbest and most satisfying thing you can do with your time.
Yeah,
totally.
It's been the best.
Thank you guys. That was amazing.
Thank you guys. Much love. Have a good fall.